Welcome back to the show, my fellow extraordinary Americans. For today's guest, we have James Bond. James Bond is one of America's leading behavioral management specialists and the author of the award-winning book Brain Glue that's been blowing people's minds and changing how thousands of marketers and entrepreneurs are selling their products and ideas. He's the president of US Management LLC, where he's the strategic growth consultant to more than 31 mid-sized companies and larger firms such as Amgen Biotech, Gannett Media, Litton Industries, British General Electric. For 13 years, he also ran one of Southern California's leading behavioral management firms, working with a who's who of American business. Early in his career, he ran an advertising agency in Montreal. He's a past workshop chairman for the resource partner of the U.S. Small Business Administration and has been a featured guest speaker at two Southern California universities. James has been featured in ABC, Fox News, Radio, NPR, CBS, Forbes, and Los Angeles Times. He's an extraordinary American, and I'm glad and honored to have him on this show. James, are you there?
I am. Hi, Cosmos. It's Thank you for having me on your show. I think you're awesome.
I think you're awesome too, and I really appreciate that you took the time out of your day to come to this podcast and share your wisdom with me and the audience.
Uh-oh.
So,
It's like, oh, seven. Uh-oh.
so,
Seven. I think my
so
parents had a sense of humor with my name, by the way. So that's why I
no,
say I'm James I. Bond. So
no,
people realize, oh, okay.
I know. Like when I first saw James Bond, I was like, wow, it's pretty cool. And so, James, I wanted to ask you about a little bit more about yourself and your background and how you got started in the world of entrepreneurship and business.
My dad was successful in business. And one of the businesses he had a big commercial laundry. And he was making like millions of dollars. And he wouldn't have me working with him in the business. And I was kind of frustrated. I mean, I wanted to learn business, and I became fascinating for me. And so I got into first advertising, then marketing, and then behavioral management. I sort of worked my way up. I learned with advertising. Advertising is communicating, having a message, and all that stuff. But but marketing oversees that. Like, how do you get people to take action? And then behavioral management is even more than that. It's like, how do you get people to do certain things? And
Hmm.
it became fascinating for me. Actually, and so I work with, as an advertising agency, I work my way up I'm originally from Montreal, although I've been for about 40 years living in Southern California. Southern California is a lot warmer. Let me start there. But when I was in Montreal, I worked my way up and eventually became an advertising agency for major companies like Kraft Foods, Timex Watches, Seagram's. Their world's headquarters was there, and I hated selling. Today I love selling. I teach people selling, and I talk about brain glue, which is really profound. But I hated selling back then. I remember going into Avon. I was just telling you this. I went into Avon. We had an opportunity to win Avon Cosmetics in Canada. And so we're sitting with the buyer from Avon, and the buyer from Avon looks at me and my brother John, and he said, you know, it's between you and this other company, and I'd rather work with you guys, but frankly, your price is higher than the other guys. And so my brother looks over to him and says, "Why do you think the other guy's so cheap?" There's a long pause, and then the buyer says, "Okay, fine, let me write up a purchase order." And I was like, for a big one, like $80,000 or something. And I thought my head was going to explode. What the hell? He's hiring me. He's hiring us because we're more expensive. What? I hated selling, but I loved psychology. And to me, this was fascinating. Psychology is like, huh? He's spending money because we're more expensive. It's fast. And I started learning all kinds of things. As time went on, I had an opportunity to win the anti-drug. Well, I broke up with my brother. I love my brother dearly, but family and business doesn't always mix. Let me start there, okay? I had to learn how to sell. But I had the opportunity to win the anti-drug campaign in America, and I came up with powerful, logical reasons why you should not do drugs. Logic. I'm a logical person, as most of us are. And I lost. And what I lost to was a commercial with a guy holding an egg saying, "This is your brain." And he cracked the egg and dropped the egg into a sizzling frying pan. This is your brain on drugs. Any questions? And I realized two things. The first one was this was infinitely more powerful than my ad. My ad was logic. This was emotional selling. But the second thing I realized was, yeah, this is emotional selling, and I have no clue how to do emotional selling. And it scared the hell out of me. Like, how do emotional selling is more powerful than logical selling. And I can do logical selling in my sleep. But emotional selling. When I was young, I met Zig Ziglar, a motivational speaker and everything. He was really great. And he said something, and I was in one of his workshops with my mom, and he said something that changed my life. And he said, selling is nothing more than a transference of passion. It's like if you saw a movie that you love, nobody has to teach you how to sell it. You go, oh, I just saw this. You got to see this movie. It's transference of passion. And I realized that there is this transference of passion that I have to learn. If I'm in advertising and marketing and business, I've got to learn how to transfer passion because that's more powerful. You have to have a logical product. It's got to be a good product, but you have to transfer it. Well, about 10 years later, we moved to Southern California. Well, actually, no. First, I put a box next to my computer. I call it the passion box. And every time I saw a commercial or heard somebody say something that was emotionally powerful, rather than trying to analyze it because I couldn't understand how to create emotional selling, I decided I'd write it on a 3x5 card, like your brain on drugs this is your brain on drugs for that commercial. Or if somebody said something that was profound, I would write it on a 3x5 card or tear it out of a magazine and put it in this box that I call the passion box.
Mm-hmm.
After about 10 years, we moved to Southern California and my passion box was really high. It was really full. But I met this guy, John Gray, and John Gray was telling me that he wrote this incredible relationship book called Men, Women, and Relationships. And everybody who read it loved it and said, this is profound. This has changed my life. This is the most profound and powerful relationship book I've ever read. And it's changing our lives. But almost nobody was buying it. And so we got this crazy idea. What from Venus? And put references to it inside the book. Guess what happened? Almost overnight, he was telling me 500,000 copies got sold. He said, I couldn't believe they were selling so fast. He's sold 50 million copies of his book, 50
Wow.
million, all because he came up with this different title. He changed the title. I thought, like, wow, this is amazing. So when I got home, the first thing I was going to do is take his book, Men Are from Mars, Women Are from Venus, and put it in my passion box. But then I stopped and I went, that's a metaphor. He's basically saying men and women are so different that sometimes it seems like we're from a different planet. That's basically what Men Are from Mars, Women Are from Venus is about. And I went, it's a metaphor, huh? And then the guy with the egg, dropping the egg into a sizzling frying pan, that's a metaphor too, because he's saying, this is your brain. No, that's an egg. No, 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 this is your brain. They were probably sitting around a table and they were thinking, so when you do drugs, what happens? And somebody probably said, well, it fries your brain. Oh, it fries your brain. Drugs. Okay, what else gets fried? Eggs. Why don't we have an egg and put it in a sizzling frying pan and say, there's your brain. Okay. And they came up with that. And I went like, wow, if I just figured out emotional selling, that's metaphors. And so when I got home, I took the passion box next to my computer and I dumped it on my bed because I needed a big space. And I discovered that metaphors is one of 14 brain triggers at the heart of emotional selling. I thought my brain was going to explode. And so I started applying it because I was a consultant. I would apply it to clients. I had these three guys who were partners at a construction company who, after 10 years, had $2 million of sales. Not bad, right? Ha! I applied this, and in 1 year, they went from 2 to 10 million in sales, and then they reached 32 million 2 years later. In fact, at the end, I remember at the end of the year, they said to me, I said, oh, wow, you got 10 million. Said, hey, James, we were supposed to get 12 million. Because I said, like, what's that goal? They said, we're supposed to get 12 million. And I said, shut up. They bought each other brand new BMWs, and they couldn't believe how much cash they had. But I uncovered this thing, brain glue, and it's blowing people's minds. And I mean famous people as well as normal people. I have Jack Canfield. Jack Canfield wrote a book called Chicken Soup for the Soul. He sold 100 million copies of Chicken Soup for the Soul and 400 million copies of the other Chicken Soup for the Teenage Soul, Chicken Soup for the Cancer Survivor Soul, and all that stuff. So this guy's
I
rich.
get chicken soup. Like
Yeah,
when
he doesn't need me telling him what to do. Oh, he told me he was pissed off. He said, I was looking at your book and I got pissed off. And I said, oh, I'm sorry. He said, no, I couldn't put the damn thing down. I said, I bought copies. Everybody in my company is getting copies of it. And they're required not just to read it, but to apply it. I'm like, well, really? Can I use that as a quote? And
yeah.
it was just, it was just fantastic. But I discovered this thing. Somebody said this to me, and you to me also. My name is James Bond. It's James I. Bond, so people can at least find me easier. Otherwise, you get, Sean Connery and all the others who are definitely better than me, but I won't get into it. But I realized that brain glue relates to my name. And here's how it relates to my name. So I was going for a walk with my mom and with my wife in this area. and in Southern California. And we're walking on a church's ground. They have this like really nice stuff. And there's a security guard who was with his wife, I guess, in this little building on the property. And so as we're walking, he comes out, he looks at us and goes, "Oh, hey, how's it going?" I said, "Not too bad." I said, "Oh yeah, we just live around the corner." He said, "Oh, okay." He said, and so I said, "Oh, he said, well, I'm Joe and this is Mary, my wife." I said, "Oh yeah, I'm James and this is my wife, Pam." And then I paused for a moment and I went, "Actually, my name is James Bond." I think my parents had a sense of humor. The guy starts laughing, but we've gone back there, and every time we pass, he goes, "Hey, James Bond, how's it going?" He remembers my name. It sticks to his brain. Okay. And so what I learned was there are certain things that stick to the brain. And if you can get it sticking to the brain, you have a better chance of making a ton of money. Let me give you a perfect, I think, a perfect example of this. So there's a mom and son in Utah, and they watch Shark Tank. They love Shark Tank, and so she was telling her son, wouldn't it be fun if we can invent a product and make some money and then get on Shark Tank? You get on Shark Tank, you become a millionaire, right, or a multimillionaire. And they went, and he's like, "Yeah, that'll be a good idea." So they're thinking about it, and it took about a month to come up with a product. And she has trouble going to the bathroom. She's constipated. I don't want to get too much into it, but okay. But a doctor said to her, when you're on the toilet, if you can raise your feet 6 to 8 inches off the ground, it's easier. The body changes the shape of your body, and it's easier going to the bathroom. She tried it, and it worked. It was really good. And then so she was talking to her son, and she said, "Well, maybe this is the thing. We should create a toilet stool that fits around the toilet. And when you're on the toilet, if you want to, you can just slide it up and put your feet on it." "Oh, that's a great idea. We could, maybe we'll get on Shark Tank." And so they found a manufacturer, and they made like about a thousand of them for like $3 each or something like that. Um, and so they had all the products, but they said we need a really good name for it. And so the first thing they're thinking of is toilet stool. And we always think of this. You always start with logic, okay? It's a toilet stool. But she goes, "I don't think that's a good name, toilet stool." It's like, that doesn't sound very interesting. So what's another word for toilet? Potty. And you're kind of squatting when you're doing this. Why don't we call it the squatty potty? Sales exploded. In less than 2 years. They had over $100 million of sales. And by the way, they made it on Shark Tank, and multiple sharks wanted to work with them. Okay, with Squatty Potty, within 2 years, these are people with no business experience, and they generated over $100 million of
Wow.
sales. Okay, because they were selling it and they ran out. They had to order some more. They saw it, they ran out. They couldn't believe how fast it was selling. So I had a heart bypass surgery about 2.5 months ago. Not fun. Okay, I was in the hospital, and a nurse was talking to me and said, "So what do you do?" So I said, "Well, I just wrote this book, Brain Glue." And I was telling her about Squatty Potty. And she starts laughing and says, "Oh, I got to tell you something. I'm a nurse. I know that you want to raise your feet. So I got a little bench in my house that I raise my feet on when I'm going to the bathroom. But when I was in a store and I saw Squatty Potty in the store and I bought it, even though I already have the bench, I thought it was such a cool name that I spent $20 and I bought Squatty Potty." I'm like, "You already have it, and yet you bought this because you like the name?" But that says a lot about it triggers the brain. If you have something that triggers the brain, it wakes up the brain, and people go like, "Whoa." And I'll tell you how this works, okay? When you're talking to somebody, most of the time they're not listening. We think people are listening because they're sitting and nodding their head and whatever else, but there are other things that are going on in their brain. But you want to wake up the brain, because if you can wake up the brain, you have a better chance of selling. I have a TV next to my computer. Okay, so I'm doing. Normally it isn't on, but for whatever reason it was on, and I'm doing work on my computer. And then they have this famous baseball player on, and he's talking about Blue Emu. It's this anti-arthritis cream that you put on your joints and stuff if you have pain in your arms and stuff. And so I'm not even listening. I could care less. But then I hear him say this. He says, "Blue Emu, it works fast and you won't stink." What did he just say? And you won't stink? What is he talking about? And from that moment forward, I was listening to the whole commercial, okay? Because it woke up the brain. It's a trigger word. So like dirty. If you had a product, would you call, or your business or your podcast, would you call it the dirty podcast? And yet dirty, there are famous movies, Dirty Dancing, Dirty Harry, Dirty Rotten Scoundrels. I mean, it's a trigger word. So I always love saying this. What does Richard Branson, billionaire Richard Branson, the singer Madonna, and olive oil have in common?
What do they have in common?
Virgin. Virgin olive oil. Madonna's most famous song, like a virgin, don't
Mhm,
touch for the very first time. Okay. And Richard Branson. Richard Branson dropped out of high school. He didn't have much money, but he borrowed some money from his dad, and he started a magazine for musicians.
mhm,
He started doing really well, and he said, "Well, you know what? I'm connected to all these musicians. Why don't I start a record company? You know."
mhm.
And so he had a friend of his, and so they were brainstorming. He said, "We need to come up with a name because we don't have much money, but it would be cool if we came up with a really cool name." And then they thought, "Well, how about Virgin Records?" Virgin Records. Oh, he made so much money from Virgin Records. He got like the Rolling Stones. He got famous people became his clients as with Virgin Records. That he went, that name Virgin is so important. I got to start trademarking all these different names. He's got Virgin Hotels in Texas. He's got Virgin cruise ships, cruise lines. Of course, he's got Virgin Airlines and Virgin Galactica and stuff like that. I mean, he's got really, but he trademarked all these names because he realized the name Virgin grabs people's attention. There's a woman in New York, uh, and I'll think of her name in a second. But she created a play, an off-Broadway play, and it's about what women have to go through. Like a woman's life is hard, and so
Mhm.
she could have called it "A Woman's Life is Hard," and maybe some people would have watched it, but almost nobody would have. Instead, she came up with the name "The Vagina Monologues."
Wow.
Eve Ensler, that's her name, Eve Ensler. And the Vagina Monologues exploded in sales. In fact, so much so that HBO actually did a show on her Vagina Monologues. Okay, it's the name Vagina. It's like, what? And so vagina is like a trigger word. And so people who use trigger words, I have this guy I was talking to who's really fabulous. He and his partner work with people who have advertising agencies, small advertising agencies, and they
Mhm.
teach them they show them how to make more money and all that stuff. I can't remember the name of his company, and most people can't. Okay, but his name is David Baer, Baer. And so I'm, talking to him and his partner, and I said, "Oh, I got the perfect name for you for your business." He said, "What?" I said, "Bare Naked Advertising." He goes,
Wow.
"Oh," his partner's laughing. He goes, "Yes, we have to name it Bare Naked Advertising. People are gonna love us." He goes, "Oh, I don't know if I want to put the name Naked next to my name," but he didn't do it, which is just crazy because there are two guys in Southern California who invented juice and all natural juice, and they're competing with Odwalla, which is owned by Coca-Cola. So they have lots of money, and they're the largest seller. They were the largest seller of natural juice. But these guys, they would actually in their lawn, in their front lawn or their back lawn, they would make it to these two guys. I have no idea why. So they created this juice, and they thought it would be really cool. Why don't we call our juice Naked Juice? So but they were embarrassed by putting the name Naked on it, so they made it kind of small. But it still started selling really well. And it's a good juice. So they made enough money that they hired this graphic artist to help them make new labels so that all the labels would look the same. You'd be able to tell it's the same company. And the graphic artist said, "I got to put the word naked big." They went, "Oh, you think so?" He said, "No, no, no. We think that's going to be fantastic." Okay. So he made it the labels with naked juice. So if you ever had it, it's fantastic juice. And their sales exploded. They shot past Odwalla, which is owned by Coca-Cola, to become the largest selling natural juice in America. And it's because of the name Naked, which is interesting. Okay. But so trigger words is one of a whole bunch of tools that are brain glue, where we start to understand that there's certain things stick to the brain. Now, I remember, I'm old enough to remember Jack and Jill went up have you ever heard this?
Yeah, Jack and Jill went up the hill.
Okay. Now, how many years ago was the last time you heard that? For me,
Like,
it was 10, 20, maybe 50, 60 years. I'm old. So 60 years ago, it's the last time I heard that. And yet I remember it like it was yesterday. I could be in my deathbed and somebody says, "Hey, James, Jack and Jill and up the," and I go, "Hell to fetch a pail of water." I remember it and yet the last time I heard it was ages ago. And it's because rhyme sticks to the brain like glue. And so when O.J. Simpson was in his murder trial, his attorney, Johnny Cochran, actually it was Johnny Cochran's friend that told him this, but he said, "You should tell him if the glove that they had a glove of the murderer." And
I
Johnny
saw that.
Cochran put it on and pretended it didn't fit him and all that stuff. So his friend said, "You got to tell the jury in your closing argument, you got to tell the jury, if the glove doesn't fit, you have to acquit. Okay, rhyme works. Okay, and so I remember after the trial, two of the jurors were being asked, with all that evidence against OJ, how come you found him not guilty? And one responded while the other one nodded in agreement, and she said, "Hey, we knew if the gloves don't fit, you have to acquit. The glove didn't fit, we had to acquit."
I know,
Rhyme.
right?
Exactly. But rhyme works. It sticks to the brain like glue. And so if you start, I would have said, remember he's an actor. You have to love how he faked the glove. I would have been another attorney. But I mean, think of the products that have squatty potty rhymes. Famous Amos. He had almost no money, and yet he became a multimillionaire with Famous Amos. 7-Eleven, 7-Eleven stores, rhymes. Reese's pieces. Pooper Scooper, okay? How about lean cuisine or shake and bake? Is it a coincidence that these things rhyme? No. They picked rhyme because rhyme is one of the things that sticks to the brain like glue. And you have a better chance of selling if you can use rhyme in how you're describing your product or service. I have for mine, I say, so it helps boost your pitch, the power of your pitch. So what rhymes with pitch? Rich, switch. Switch your pitch if you want to get rich. Oh, there's cool.
Wow.
Then I said, okay, well, what else? I want to get a more sophisticated one. So it helps buyers become more passionate about your product or service or whatever you're selling. Passion, okay, is what's another word for passion? Desire. Oh, okay. Oh, I got the phrase. Brain glue lights the fire of desire in your buyer. Oh, interesting. Okay. So I work with Warren Buffett's team. Warren Buffett brought me in when they were started buying businesses, and I have I'm considered one of America's leading behavioral management specialists. So I help them, change the behaviors of certain people. And Warren Buffett has great lines that use brain glue type tools. And one of the lines he said was, "Only when the tide goes out do you discover who's been swimming naked."
Wow.
Okay. That word,
Wow.
notice how you're listening to it, but when you hear the word naked, suddenly the whole thing comes in like, what? Okay. But, he recognized the power of, certain words that you can describe something. And if you use certain words, so there's this guy, Paul Tran, Paul Tran, who started. He invented an electric razor for man's private areas. I don't want to get too much into it, but okay. So, an electric razor for man's private areas. So he wanted to come up with a name that people would know what the product does, but he would not offend people. So he's thinking about it, and he goes, "Well, it's just like a lawnmower. Why don't I call it the lawnmower?" Okay. And he
Wow.
changed the name of his company to Manscaped. We're going to landscape the man with a lawnmower. I was in one of the stores like Bed Bath and Beyond or something. My wife wanted to buy something, and they had a big poster, a big white poster, and it said the lawnmower had an arrow, and it showed the electric razor, and underneath it has a description. And there were two guys who were reading the stuff, and I became the third one. Walked up to it and started reading it. Oh, it's for man's private areas. It's called a lawnmower. Now, I never bought one. If I bought one, I would not share it with my friends. Let's start there, okay? But if I bought one, I could see calling my buddy Joe. Hey, Joe, guess what I just bought? What? The lawnmower. Oh, you have to mow your lawn? No, for shaving man's private areas. He'd start laughing and call his wife. Hey, Mary, guess what James just bought? What? The lawnmower. Oh, does he have to mow his lawn? No, it's for shaving his private areas. She'd start laughing, and she'd tell her friend, and it would become viral. And that's basically what happened. Is it became viral. Here's the lawnmower. Oh, okay. What? Why is it called the lawnmower? But so yeah, there are certain ways that you could explain what you sell. Like you can come up with a metaphor by completing this phrase. My product or service or idea is just like, okay, and be as crazy as possible. So I remember the naked thing when I heard the phrase, only when the tide goes out do you discover who's been swimming naked, which is basically he's saying only when times get tough do you realize who's really capable and competent. That's what he's saying. But if he said it that way, you go, yeah, true, okay, yeah, whatever, and that's it. You go on. But because he said only when the tide goes out do you discover who's been swimming naked, people laugh and they get it and they go, whoa, okay. So I realized if I want to describe my book, what it does is it grabs attention. So it grabs attention like a naked man running through your backyard. If you had a naked man running through your backyard, would that grab your attention? My book
Yeah.
does the same, okay? So it's just, wakes up the brain.
Like
you
James,
know?
what I find fascinating is how like logical selling does is nothing compared to emotional selling. Like it's like one of those profound like a lot of like people like they when they first get into the business of selling and ads and everything like that, they start off with the oh if I give the logical points it'll work out. But obviously emotions are more powerful than logic. Like it even works in politics as well. And a lot of times you notice that the most successful politicians, the most successful people that attain power are the ones that reach out to the emotions of the masses, you know, versus
Absolutely. And they use emotional tools. So here's a tool. It's called alliteration or repetition of sound. And I'll show you how it's used in politics. Okay. First, so it's I didn't realize this when I started researching this. I realized, whoa, there are all these things that use this. Coca-Cola. You think it's a coincidence? PayPal, TikTok. You know, it's Chinese social media platform, but it's called TikTok. You think it's a coincidence that they use alliteration? No. You know, so in American election, what do we have? We have Biden's Build Back Better. Buh, buh, buh. You think it's a coincidence they use alliteration? No. They have Build-A-Bear, the toy stores. You know, a Bed Bath and Beyond, Best Buy. Buh, buh. You think it's a coincidence that all these things use that alliteration? And Trump used Make America Great Again. He actually got it from Reagan. But good, good, great again. So, okay, let's say you invented a glue, okay, a really cool glue, and you want to come up with a name for it because you don't just want to call it glue or Osmos glue or something like that. I mean, maybe you can, but it's harder to. Brain glue works when you don't have a lot of money. If you have $10 million to spend on advertising, you can be successful and not use brain glue. But most of us don't have that much money to spend on advertising.
Mhm.
Okay, so you're creating a glue. So let me think about a metaphor. So how strong is it? It's as strong as an elephant. So elephant glue. Okay, that's good. But that's good. But let me find if there's another thing. I'll use alliteration, repetition of sound. Good. Gorilla glue. Ah, gorilla glue. I didn't even know. I bought Gorilla Glue. I forgot that I even have it when I was talking to somebody about it. They said, "Yeah, you should buy it." Oh, wait a second, I already did. You go into a major store that has all these supplies and stuff, and Gorilla Glue has almost a whole shelf, all these different categories of it. I have friends in construction who say there's another glue called JB Weld, and JB Weld is much better than Gorilla Glue. Well,
Mhm.
JB Weld has maybe two products on a shelf, whereas Gorilla Glue has a whole category of products. And it doesn't matter if it's better or not better; it has a better name. And so Gorilla Glue just jumps off the shelf or your ad, uh, which is really what you want. You want it to jump off so it grabs your attention. And to me, I always go back to Blue Emu. Work fast and you won't stink. What? What did he just say? You know, woke up my brain. The beginning didn't wake up my brain, but that end part, like, whoa, really woke up my brain. And I'll tell you this because Brain Glue is the third title I had for my book, and I messed up. But the so I was reading about this guy Carey Smith, and Carey Smith started. He had a fan company, and he was selling fans. He called them. I'll have to think of what he called them. Hang on a second. I've got the name here. Whatever it was something like uh, there were huge fans that were used in farms, mostly in barns. Okay. And they were used for if you have cows or horses, you're not going to put air conditioning in a barn. You're going to put a fan. And then he would sell it to like warehouses and stuff like that. And so he was struggling trying to find a good name for it. And he was selling them, and they were okay, but not doing really really great. And then a friend of his was talking about it and said, "Well, tell me about your fans." He said, "Well, they're big." So how big are they? They're big ass fans. And he goes, "Big ass fans. Oh, wow. That's what you got to tell everybody. They're big ass fans." And he goes, "Huh, that's interesting." So first he ran an ad and he said, "We're selling big ass fans." And suddenly and sales exploded. So he said, "Maybe I should change the name of the company to Big Ass Fans and put a logo." He has a really cool logo of a donkey with his butt facing you and his face is off in a distance turned looking at you. So a donkey's butt. A donkey is an ass and he's got his butt facing you, okay? Big Ass Fans. He talks a lot about this. He said sales exploded and he started offering other products, and then he realized these other products are distracting me from the fans, or he stopped selling everything, just focus on the fans. He had the business for 15 years. He isn't that old. and he sold the business after 15 years. Guess how much he sold it for? $500 million. Okay,
Wow.
talk about being rich, going from like almost no money to suddenly being rich, and it's
Wow.
because he came up with this name. It's a trigger word, ass. So when I so I'm at the beginning of I wrote the book and I'm about to sell it, and I need a title, and so I'm going, okay, I should use the word ass in it. So I called it "Dump Your Half-Ass Marketing Strategy," and it started selling like crazy. But then Amazon came to me, contacted me, and said, we don't like having a swear word in books, so you need to we're not going to allow you to advertise on Amazon. And I'm like, oh no, you know, come on. They said, no, 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 we're not going to allow you to advertise on Amazon. I had like 80 reviews. When you get over 100 reviews on Amazon selling a book, then Amazon helps you sell the book because they see a lot of people like it. So I begged them. I said, well, if I'm going to change the name, will you let me keep all the reviews that I have? And they said, okay, we don't normally do this, but because we're forcing you to change, yes. So me, like an idiot, I came up with a logical title, and it was "Sell More with the Right Brain Marketing Strategy." People loved my book, but they couldn't remember the name, the title of it. And I'm James Bond, so they couldn't find me, because got Sean Connery. And so but then the book was selling okay. So when I met Jack Canfield, I have a friend who gave a copy of my book to Jack Canfield. He started looking at the book and he got pissed off because he said, I couldn't put the damn thing down. I got so many books I got to review and look at. And I looked at your book and I couldn't put the damn thing down. And I bought copies for everybody else. And first I apologized. I'm so sorry. And then I said, can I use that as a quote? Can I videotape you with that quote? And he said, on one condition, you got to change the title of the book. So it's a stupid title. You're selling us on emotional selling, and you have a logical title. Sell more with the right brain marketing strategy. The whole book's about brain glue. You have to change the title of brain glue, and I'll give you all the quotes you want. I'm like, do I have to? He said, yes. Come on. You're teaching us emotional selling, and you have logical selling in the title. That's crazy. And so I had to change the title correctly. Okay. But it's true that, we're logical people. And so you want to start with a logical description of what your product or service is, or your idea. It could be ideas too. I mean, there are famous people. There's a black civil rights activist named Malcolm X, and Malcolm X used a tool called chiasmus, which is a flip. All for one and one for all. Okay, when the going gets tough, the tough get going. It's a flip. Okay,
Mhm.
and he had two of them that were really famous. One was, we didn't land on Plymouth Rock; the rock landed on us. Okay, and that's if he said, I'm a black person in America and you have no idea how hard it is to be black in America, people would go, yeah, okay, yeah, fine, everything else. But for him to say, we didn't land on Plymouth Rock, which was the first thing that people that
Yeah.
came to America landed on. We didn't land on Plymouth Rock; the rock landed on us. It grabs your attention, more than just a straight phrase. Here's another phrase that a lot of people don't know. He came up with it, but he said, "When you stand for nothing, you'll fall for anything." Ah, and see, so when you learn these tools, you start to realize, well, I can apply this to the stuff that I'm trying to do, whether I'm trying to sell something or sell an idea, trying to convince someone of something. It's just amazing. I'm not against guns. I'm an anti-gun person, but there's this great phrase that said, uses chiasmus, it flips, okay? Um, the right to bear arms is almost as crazy as the right to arm bears.
Wow.
Okay. Huh? Okay. I'm an older guy, so I can relate to this one. I'd rather wake up and pee than pee and wake up. Okay.
Yeah.
It's that flip, so there's these tools. When you start learning the tools, you start to recognize how many places you start seeing In-N-Out burgers. In-N-Out burgers in California, now they're in the Western United States. They compete with McDonald's and Burger King and all that stuff. They're making millions of dollars. It's just a family owned business. But because they call it In-N-Out burgers, In-N-Out has two definitions. The first one is because it's a drive through. So they called it In-N-Out. You have to go in and out, and they use chiasmus, which is a flip. Okay. In and out are opposite. But in and out also means sex to a lot of people.
Yeah.
So I remember driving down the street with my mom, with my wife, and we're going to McDonald's, and we're passing, and it goes like In-N-Out burgers. In-N-Out burgers? What? We got to stop and let's check that out. Okay, and that's what you want is you want to wake up the brain so people are going, looking at ads or whatever else, and then they stop and they go like, whoa, wait a second, what's that? You know, and that gives you a better chance of being able to sell your product or service or idea because you're grabbing their attention first. There's a woman who's she spent no money. Okay, there are a lot of people who spend a fortune on Facebook ads to try to get a lot of people coming to their page and buying their product or whatever else. Well, here's a stay-at-home mom who spent no money, and she has more than 5 million fans. Okay. How did she get 5 million fans? Well, she came up with a cool name. Thinking, well, I'm a stay-at-home mom, so let's see, I should call my page Mommy Needs a Rest. Mommy needs time to herself. Come on, mommy needs a lot of stuff. I mean, mommy's exhausted. Oh, I know what mommy needs. Mommy needs vodka. Okay. So what she did, I remember I have a friend who must be one of her fans. And so he shared a post. I was looking at the post. Oh, it's really good. It's by Mommy Needs Vodka. What the heck's that? I clicked on that. I looked at her page. I liked the post that she had, and I became one of the fans. I mean, how many people have really good Facebook pages, and yet you don't have that many fans? And yet here's this woman who has more than 5 million fans. And
Mhm.
so if you go back to like O.J. Simpson, if the glove doesn't fit, you have to acquit, then it actually has the ability to get you off on a trial. Persuasion things like Warren Buffett saying, only when the tide goes out do you discover who's been swimming naked, or other things like that. And advertising or marketing, or you're putting a name on your product or service, and suddenly you see sales explode. You start
But
to
you
realize
but
how.
you call it brain glue, but I'm what's coming to my mind is brain hack because you're literally doing like a neural hacking of the brain. It says it's almost like a Jedi or Sith mind trick if you think about it. You
Yep,
know, it can be used for good or evil, like just like
yep.
understanding how the mind works and all that stuff. It's just so crazy and fascinating, and I could like ask you for like hours about this stuff. You know, it's like deeply fascinating for me, especially.
Well, and so here's one of the tools. It's called anchoring. Okay. So as kids, we all knew head and shoulders, knees and toes, eyes, ears, mouth, and nose. Okay. I can't even do it anymore. Anyway, but we do it with kids. So Procter and Gamble figured, why don't we steal that name because we have a dandruff shampoo and call it Head and Shoulders shampoo? It's anchoring because you're picking something that exists. So there's this guy. Um, I have to remember his name. Um, um, I forget his name, but he uh, Bobby Flay, and Bobby Flay is a chef, and he needed to create he was creating a show for the Food Channel, okay, and he wanted a name that people would remember. And so he figured, I'm going to be grilling people. I'll show them how to grill stuff in their backyard and whatever else, and grill really cool foods. That'll be my specialty. So I need a really cool name, Grill. So what does grill sound like? Kind of sounds like girl.
Yeah.
And what's a phrase with girl? Boy meets girl. Oh, I'll call it Boy Meets Grill. Boy Meets Grill. He anchored something that's already in our brains, but twisted it a little bit, and you suddenly went, whoa. It gets your attention, and you check it out, okay? And so President Ronald Reagan, whether you like Reagan or not, it doesn't matter. It's not political, okay? But Reagan was right after the Vietnam War that he was president. And so people were protesting against war, okay? They really didn't like war. But the military side came to Reagan and said, well, we got to create these missiles, a missile defense system, so if anybody fires missiles at us, that we can actually knock off we can shoot them down. He said, okay, fine. Well, the problem is if he promoted the missile defense system, then there would be protests because people are against all war, and now he's got missiles he's spending all our money on and everything else. So he figured people are going to hate us, and it's going to be really hard to promote it. But back then, guess what movie was really famous? Star Wars. They had just launched Star Wars, and everybody loved it. So he came up with the idea, or they came up with the idea, anchoring. Let's marry these two pieces and put it together. We're going to call it the Star Wars Missile Defense System. He said. So Reagan came forward and said, we're starting this thing, and it's called the Star Wars Missile Defense System.
Wow.
Nobody complained. They went, "Wow, that's awesome! That's
Wow. This
awesome!"
is
Okay,
literally
because
a
he anchored
mind
the two
trick.
things together. Persuasion. Okay, and that's what we got to understand is that this is how persuasion works. Is if you take something that people hate and you're trying to sell it, if you can anchor it somehow with something that people love, there's a good chance that they're actually going to love what you're presenting.
That is so crazy, and yet it makes complete sense to me.
Yeah, it does. I mean, it's really it's stuff like that is amazing. I heard somebody say, you can't hug a child with nuclear arms. It's like what? But that's using that, it's anchoring two things together. They said it's emotional, so it's arms, nuclear arms, arms. So what else can you do with arms? Well, you hug kids. Oh, you can't hug your child with nuclear arms. And they anchor those two things together, and now they get you to hate, or not everybody hates it, but this whole idea of like you can't hug a child with nuclear arms. It's kind of a stupid quote, But I get that what you're trying to say is nuclear arms is not really a good thing. So Reagan used it for positive, and so other people use the brain glue type tool, the anchoring, for a negative to get people to hate something.
Yeah,
And it's just
James.
when we start to understand this, we start to hear this, and then we start to apply it, which is really cool. But when we start to hear this stuff, we start to realize, like, oh, that's interesting. And you start to recognize things that are really successful or famous or whatever else, and how they use these types of tools.
James, there's so much to talk about, and what you're telling is just invaluable information. And but the hour is coming to a close, so before we end the podcast, I wanted to ask, like, where can our audience get to buy your Brain Blue book, and also how can they connect with you and get to know more about you and everything that you do?
Well, the one place to go is you can go to yesbrainglue.com, and actually has a lot of information on the brain glue in the book and everything else. Hopefully you'll buy it, but even if you don't buy it, you'll get lots of information on it. That's the first thing. So yes, brain glue, and that's an easy way. But yeah, but let me give your audience a couple of quick tools that they can apply right away. Now, hopefully you buy the book because I think you guys will love the book. But I'll give you some of the tools that you could apply. Okay, here's the first tool: a metaphor. My product or idea, whatever it is just like what? And be as crazy as possible. Start with as craziest idea. My book is like a naked man running through your backyard. Okay. Just have fun with it. Because remember the lawnmower. Okay. He had fun with it. And he came up and he decided, why do I call it the lawnmower? But so, whatever your product or idea is or service, come up with, complete the phrase, my product or idea is just like what? And be as crazy as possible. Okay. The second one is list at least 3 words. 3 words is fine that relate to your product or idea. Okay. If I'm selling persuasion, so, whatever it is. And then you can actually go to Chat GPT or some AI, and you can ask for all the words that rhyme. What are 100 words that rhyme with these words? And you see all the words that rhyme. And when they do that, then you can start anchoring them together and come up with a pretty cool name. And then the last one is alliteration, repetition of sound, like gorilla glue. Okay. So whatever your product is, first come up with a logical name for your product, and then come up with as many words that have to start with the same sound as that product or service that you have.
Mhm.
And those three are a good starting point that will get you to start coming up with things that you never even considered before. Like I did with mine. It's like, brain glue lights the fire of desire in your buyer. I love saying that because it relates. People can relate that. It wakes up part of the brain. But if you take these three, which is my product or service is just like, and have fun with it, and then look for words that rhyme with it and alliterate with it, same sound, you have a good shot at getting some ideas that will really excite you. But
That
yeah,
is
the Yes Brain Glue. Go to yesbrainglue.com, and you'll get like all kinds of information on it that I think you'll find helpful.
James, I'm so glad that you took the time to come on this podcast and share this invaluable wisdom, because what you just literally talked about is nothing short of like a superpower. The people that understand this will basically be successful and financially free in their business. And I would definitely recommend my audience and my listeners to definitely buy this book and understand how to sell. And you have to realize it's not about logical selling, it's about emotional selling. People respond to emotions and to triggers more than anything else. And so I do hope that you take the time to come back to this podcast at a later time, because I really appreciated having you.
Oh, thank you. Thank you so much. And by the way, the book is fun and funny because it's got lots of jokes because comedians use brain glue all the time. I didn't even realize it, but it's like suddenly as soon as you learn the tool, you go, oh, wait a second, that joke, oh, that joke. So yeah, it'll be a lot of fun. But yeah, thank you very much for having me.
So thank you so much. And I want to end this episode by letting my fellow extraordinary Americans know, hey, listen, there's an extraordinary within each and every one of us. And it's our duty to awaken it and unleash it. Until next time, bye for now. Hey everyone, thank you for watching Extraordinary America. If you like what you see, please do subscribe to our podcast and share it with others. Remember that the best investment that you can make in your lifetime is in your own financial education, for it is knowledge that truly sets us free. Also, remember that inflation is diluting your purchasing power, which in turn increases financial bondage. The practical thing to do is to protect the loss of your purchasing power and invest in precious metals or the right cryptocurrencies. Lastly, never forget that you are an extraordinary American. We'll see you in the next episode. Bye for now.